Welcome everybody to the Robotech Painting Guide. Yes, Robotech from Palladium Games for the new Robotech Tactics miniature game. Who doesn't like Robotech? Come on. And we're going to be painting up the Regult pods here. And in this video, we're going to have two goals. First of all, we're looking to paint fast. Now, if you're looking to play the game, you need a bare minimum of about 24 pods. And that doesn't sound like a lot for a miniature game, but the issue is these miniatures, they're all the exact same, and you're doing the exact same thing over and over again. You may think to yourself, well, that's the same thing like with Space Marines or something like that. But Space Marines, you have them in different positions, you have some different weapons, there's some variation. There is none here. It's all the exact same miniature, just with the legs in different positions. So, want to paint fast so I don't get burnt out. I just don't have the time to put 5 highlights on each miniature. The second goal is, since this is from an anime, we're going to try to paint it in a anime style, very cartoony style. So that means we're going to go with extreme contrast and, once again, very limited highlight and shading. Started off with Vallejo Gray primer, airbrushed all over the miniature, and then I did a halo of Vallejo whites, using the airbrush to spray white from the top down, leaving some of the primer showing in the recesses in the bottom areas of the model. After that, started off painting the dark gray areas using some Vallejo model color German Grey, as you see here. After that, we move on to the main body color, and Vallejo Game Color Electric Blue seems to be a really good match for the show. And in case you didn't notice, with the German Grey, no highlighting, no shading, just a base coat, and that's it, and we're moving on. So we're about 2.5 minutes in, and we're already on the final base color. Amazing, isn't it? For that, we're using Vallejo model color Flat Red and just painting the few little round nubs here and there on the pod, as well as the center nose lens area. Now here's where things get more interesting. I coated the entire miniature with a acrylic gloss coat through my airbrush, and now we're doing some recessed panel line work, and for that I am using a Gundam marker. These markers are used mainly on Gundam models to fill in the recesses for a bit of contrast, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So this is a Gundam marker GM01, which I believe is the smallest one they make. And we're just going into the recesses and painting in all the black lines around it, so it looks much more like the anime. If you cannot find a Gundam marker, but if you have an art store anywhere nearby, you can also pick up a Pigma Micron pen. I would suggest a number 5, and it's the exact same thing. Now you may be asking, why am I not using an enamel wash or something else at this stage? Well, there's 2 reasons for that. First of all, the panel lines that I'm drawing here, some are extremely fine and some don't even exist. A wash just wouldn't settle well in those extremely delicate panel lines. Some of the detail around the faceplate, mainly also on the that white area on top of the pod, that's not very well defined on the miniature. There's nothing for a wash to catch. Secondly is, since I'm trying to recreate the anime look, I don't want a dirty enamel wash on it, and enamel washes do usually end up drying very dirty, so the pen allows some contrast and black lining and is done very cleanly. Of course, you want to be as careful as possible when using the pen, but mistakes will be made. And now I'm going back and cleaning up any errors using some lacquer thinner and a brush to quickly wipe away all those little boo-boos. And the reason why we did this over a gloss coat was because it allows this stage to happen. The gloss coat will prevent the ink from seeping into the paint and allow us to remove it. So just a slightly dampened brush, slightly dampened with a little bit of lacquer thinner. And you need to clean your brush often, because if you brush too much, you'll just end up smearing the marker all around rather than removing it. Now, the Gundam marker does work really well for the recessed panel lines, but it doesn't work very well in the larger areas, mainly around the knees. For that, I'm just using some thin black paint, carefully painted into those areas. As much as I would like to call it quits there, this is Dr. Faust Painting Clinic. We need to add some highlighting to the miniature. And for that, we're using Vallejo Model Color white paint. And as the Gundam marker was used in the recesses, we're using the white paint to pick out the edges. So just go around on any edge area that you think needs a little bit of extra highlighting, and just give it a nice little clean line with the white paint. Some of the smaller areas I painted entirely with white so they stand out better. Because of the white that I initially airbrushed over the miniature, there was still a lot of the gray primer showing, which is what I wanted, but that means that using just straight white for all the edging doesn't work out too well. It was too stark. So I mixed in a little bit of Vallejo Game Color Stonewall Gray, and I'm using that to soften the transition between the gray and the white I just did wherever that's necessary. For example, the round areas of the feet, there's no edge there, so instead I used the gray and white mix. I also cleaned up any areas that were still messed up from the pen work. Fortunately, the Stonewall Gray is a really good match for Vallejo Gray primer. Before applying the decals, I once again covered the miniature with an acrylic gloss coat, and the important word there is an acrylic gloss coat. All the work that we just did with the Gundam markers, remember that we did the cleanup work with a lacquer thinner. If you are going to gloss it and you use a spray can, virtually any spray can, or Testors gloss coat or something like that, those are all lacquer based. You spray that on now, and all your marker work will just disappear. It will just wipe away instantly. So you need to cover it with an acrylic gloss. If you do not have an airbrush, simply take an acrylic gloss and use it as a wash. Run it along all the panel lines to protect all the marker areas. But after that, we're doing the decals now, and this is a very slow step because there is a 9 decals minimum to recreate the look on the show. You can use less if you want, of course, but I have to overdo everything. For the bases, I had a last-minute idea I decided to try. Since the scale of these is extremely small, I think it's about 1 to 156 or something like that, but I believe the miniatures, a man is supposed to be about 10 millimeters tall, so that's extremely small. And rather than putting rubble, which would be out of scale on the bases, instead I went to Google Images, found some street renders, printed those out, covered the paper with a few coats of gloss coat to protect the paper, and then using a circle template, I simply just cut out circles of the street that I could put on the bases. Now, if you do this at home, don't do what I did. Don't use a standard number 11 X-Acto knife. First of all, it's not very good at cutting circles. Secondly, I was trimming off little bits of my plastic circle template as I was doing that. So get an actual swivel knife if you want to follow along. Even though I did protect the paper with a gloss coat, I was still worried about using any sort of moisture that may cause the paper to wrinkle. So to glue the circles down, instead I'm using some Dullcote lacquer, and it acts like a glue. I actually use this quite often for photo etch parts. So just put it down cleanly, press the paper in, and then once it's dry, I did about 3 more coats, letting each one dry about an hour to hermetically seal the paper down onto the bases, and there should be no reason for them to come off, hopefully, anytime down the road. The final step is to obviously glue the miniatures to the bases, and obviously super gluing to paper, not a good idea. So I did have to pin the miniatures into place. Just drill your appropriate holes, line them up, use a little bit of super glue and some paper clips, and you're good to go. Once the glue was dry, I did coat the miniature with some Testors Dullcote to get rid of all the shine, which, because we did the acrylic gloss earlier, we can use the lacquer base Dullcote afterwards without damaging all the marker marks. And with that, we're done, or at least you're done. I still have a lot more pods to paint, but we have a really quick paint scheme here. Fairly simple to do, fairly quick, which is one of my goals with this. The other goal, of course, is to make it look like the anime, and by limiting the shades and highlights and just going for that stark black line against the white, I think we did a pretty good job of that. And the Gundam marker actually works really well. I have to be careful not to abuse it on a whole lot of other projects. And you just have to remember not to press very hard or you'll damage it. If you do order one online, I suggest getting a couple just so you have some standbys. But you can do this while you're sitting on the couch watching television. You don't have to be at your desk to do it. So it's a fun thing to play around. These are fairly fun to paint, just not to paint so many of them. But I got a lot more to do. So thanks for watching. See you next time.